So before I try to explain what Django signals are, I want to bring up an example of where signals may be useful in our application. So imagine somebody goes to our website and they go to that registration form, they fill out everything, they hit submit, and now they are added to the database. Well, on submit, we want to fire off some kind of action that sends out an email to that user and it lets them know that they now have an account with some kind of welcome message. Well, this is a perfect example of when a signal may be very useful. So signals are just a way of listening to actions that are performed in our application, and they can fire off certain events. So in this case, we would create some kind of listener for that action, and we would listen to every single time a new user was added to that database. So signals are comprised of senders and receivers. So the sender would be that action or that instance of that user being created, and the receiver would be the function that hears that action and then fires off a different action. So let me pull up an example here. So I just drew this up before the video. I was trying to figure out how I can visually explain what's going on, and let's take a look at this. So up here we have a sender, and then down here we have two receivers. So the sender is the user model, and in this case, this sender triggers off every time we trigger the save method on a user. So if a user is created or updated, at some point that save method is triggered. So what we can do is we can create these receivers, and one type of receiver we can create is a pre-save receiver that triggers before this action is created. So right before save is completed or that action is run, we can go ahead and trigger a receiver, and that receiver can trigger a function that does whatever we want it to do. At this point, in this receiver, we can call the post save method, which would trigger after the user was created. So this is where we can trigger an action and send an email. So we don't have to write this logic anywhere in our view. We just create these listeners and we listen for events. Now, what if we wanted to update the admin and let an admin in our application know that a user was deleted? So every time a user deletes their account, we send out some kind of email or some kind of alert message to maybe the administrator of that website. So in this case, the sender is still the user model, and we're listening for the delete method here. So anytime a user is deleted, we can trigger an action that triggers before the user is deleted or after the user is deleted. So let's say a user gets deleted, and we just want to fire off an email and send it to that user. So they're very convenient. Let's go ahead and just start trying to create this, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So if I go into my code here, let's go ahead and write our signals directly within our models here. So at some point, we're actually gonna separate this into its own file, but I wanna write them in our model because we are gonna be working with model signals. So if I open up the Django documentation, I'd recommend you look up Django signals, just do a Google search, and this is probably what will come up here. So if we look at signals here we have model signals, we have different types here. The ones we'll be working with the most are gonna be post-delete, pre-delete, post-save, pre-save, and yeah, it's just gonna be those ones at this point. So let's go back into our models.py file. And I forgot to mention, this is inside of the users app here. So we wanna work with the profile model here. So the first thing we're gonna do is just create some kind of receiver and sender that's gonna fire off anytime the save method is called on the user profile. So let's go ahead and make a quick import here. And the first thing I wanna do is import from Django.db.models.signals, and we want to import the post save signal here. So this method right here is going to trigger anytime a model is saved already and after the fact that it's saved. So after it's saved. So now that we have that import, let's go ahead and create a function here. So this is the function that we're going to trigger here. So this is going to be the receiver. So we'll just say profile updated. So some kind of value or something occurred here, and we're going to pass in some parameters. So we're going to go ahead and take in the sender, and the sender is going to be the model that actually sends this. Then we want to pass in the instance, and that's going to be the instance of the model that actually triggered this, or the object. And then we're going to have the created argument here. So created is going to be very valuable. This is going to let us know it's simply going to be a true or false value if a user was added or a model was added to the database, or if it was simply saved again. So it lets us know if a new record in the database was added or not. So it's going to be a true or false value. Now in here, we're just going to pass in the rest of the keyword arguments, so quargs, And that is our function. So this is what we're going to trigger. So in this case, let's just say profile saved here. So profile saved. Okay, so that's it for now. So let's go ahead and actually connect this. So what we need to do is we need to take in this import. So post save, we just imported that, and we're going to do .connect. And with this method here, we're going to pass in the function that we want to trigger. So on post save, let's go ahead and trigger profile updated. So the profile updated function, that's this right here. And when do we want to trigger this? Well, we need to pass in a sender. So what model is going to send this? What model is going to trigger this? So this is going to be the profile model. So anytime the save method is called on the profile model, after the save method is complete, that model is saved, we're going to trigger this method here. So let's go ahead and test this. So we're going to save this. We'll open up our Django admin panel and let's see what happens. So at this point, we just want to print this. So we'll go in here and let's move this down here. Let's open up the terminal and let's go ahead and go to a profile. So we're going to take a profile here and let's go ahead and go to Dennis Ivy and we're going to hit save. So look what happened here. So we hit save, and in here in the console or in the terminal, we can see profile saved. So that just triggered. What happened here? So the profile was updated, then we were connected to it. We know who the sender is. So anytime the profile is updated, we just fire off this function. So let's add a few more things here. Let's print out our sender and receiver. So let's just do our sender and instance. So we'll say instance here, and we want to see what this actually is. So let's just do instance. We'll throw that in. And then underneath that, let's just go ahead and print out, let's see, we'll just print out created. So we want to know, was this a new instance or not? So we want to go ahead and add in created, and I'm going to save that. So now I want to go ahead and save one. I want to update another profile, and then I actually want to create a new one. So before we do that, if we create a profile without a user, we're going to get an error. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's remove self.user.username. And let's just throw in the username. So if we don't have a username there, it's just going to be an empty value. So now, and I just wanted to make sure to update that, do that if we are creating a new one. So don't forget that. So let's go ahead and check this out now. So if I go to the same user, let's go to Dennis Ivy and I hit save. There we go. We see the instance that was Dennis Ivy created. Well, this wasn't a new user. We just triggered that save method, so that is false. So if I go to another user, let's go to John Doe. Let's hit save. There we go. So there's going to be plenty of examples of when something else may need to trigger because of this. And we're actually going to implement a real example after this. So I just wanted to demo this for you. So now let's go ahead and try to create a new profile. So let's go to users or home profiles. And we want to see if it fires off and lets us know if a user was created. So let's go ahead and do Steve here for the name. And let's do Steve for the username. Or let's do Steve-O. Now, if I go ahead and hit save, look what just happened here. So profile was saved. Yes, that's correct. The instance is Steve-O. Created is now true. So this means that this was the first time this item was in our database. So that was set to true, and that's very valuable. Created was false earlier, and now it's true. So let's go ahead and try deleting an object. So let's import post delete. So we'll just do post underscore delete here. And when a user is deleted, we want to add a new function for this. So let's say this function here, anytime we delete a profile, we also want to delete a user. And this is actually something we'll do. So we'll just do this, delete user. This is going to be a real function here. And in this case, we're just going to pass in the sender, and we're going to pass in the instance. So we'll pass in the instance, and then we'll pass in the rest here. So we'll just do quargs, pass in all the keyword arguments. And now let's go ahead and fire something off. So we'll just do this, and we're going to say deleting user ... Okay, so down here, all we're going to do is post underscore delete. And this is going to trigger anytime a profile is deleted. So we'll just do connect here. And in here, we're going to pass in delete user. So let's do delete user. And let's go ahead and pass in the sender. And the sender here is also going to be the profile. So when a profile is deleted, we want to delete the user. For now, we're just going to print something out here. So let's go ahead and open up that terminal again, and let's delete Steve-O here. So let's go ahead and go to Steve-O, and we're going to hit delete. that should have printed out user was deleted. Oh, I didn't confirm that yet. So let's go ahead and hit yes. And there we go, deleting user. So this is all very useful. We're gonna need all these actions. So what I wanna do next here is quickly show you how to use decorators here. So instead of using this post connect method, we're gonna use a decorator. This is just another way of using it. I personally prefer this because it keeps my code separated. But let's go ahead and import a decorator. So we can do the same exact thing by triggering these with a receiver now, or with a decorator. So we'll just do from Django.dispatch, and let's import receiver. So if you're looking up the documentation or other code, you might see it this way. That's why I wanted to show you this. So let's take this receiver, and we're gonna comment out both of these. Now these will not fire because they're not connected. So we just disconnected those. So now we can go ahead and go to profile updated, add in a decorator, and we'll just do receiver. So that's what we just imported. And in the receiver, it takes in the actual sender. So let's go ahead, or not the sender, but the type of signal. So this will be post_save, and then the sender. So the sender is gonna be the profile. So we're only gonna use the receiver here, and then I'll comment that out so you can have that in your code. Okay, so now we're not using this, we're not connecting it this way. We just added a receiver and went ahead and added that above there. So let's go ahead and update another profile. So we'll go to profiles here. Let's make sure it's still working. John Doe or Dennis Ivy. Hit save. And let's see, did that fire off here? Okay, so there we go, that fired off. So that's just another way of doing this. So let's actually do something with this. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and just uncomment this. Let's go ahead and open these up here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a signal that creates a user profile anytime a user is created. So in our application here, or in our website, we are gonna have a registration form. Someone's gonna register. And remember, we're connecting a profile to a user. So instead of having to submit different forms, somebody's gonna create a user profile, and then, or they're gonna create a user account, and then immediately a profile will be generated for them. So at this point, we have to create a user, and then we have to create a profile and connect it. So let's go back into our signals here, and we're gonna call this update or create profile. So the first function here is simply gonna create a profile. So we're gonna do create profile, and then we're gonna take this function or this method here, and we're gonna add that here. So we're just gonna replace that. So we're gonna fire this off anytime a user is created. So in this case, the sender is now gonna be the user. So anytime a user model gets created, a profile will get created. And I just wanna make sure that the user is imported. So there we go, we have a user. So what do we wanna do anytime a user is created? Well, the first thing I wanna do is I wanna check if this is the first instance of a new user. So this signal will get fired off anytime the save method is run. So this is where the created flag helps. So what we can do is we can check if this is created, if this is the first instance of this user, and we're just gonna do if created. Then let's go ahead and set the user here, and the user is gonna be the instance. So remember, the instance is gonna be the sender here, so the instance of that sender. So we set that variable for the user. Now what we wanna do is we wanna create a profile. So we'll set profile, and we're gonna do profile.objects.create. So we're just simply gonna create a profile. And in this case, we're gonna set the user to the user instance. So remember, in the admin panel, a profile needs a user. So we're gonna automatically connect the new profile we're creating to the user that just triggered this. So we set the user, and underneath the user, we're gonna set the user name here. So anytime a user is created, we also wanna give that profile name. So we just want a string representation of that. So it's almost like a stamp here to where we just duplicate it. So we're just gonna do user name like that. So after username, what else do we want to automatically update? So in this case, we wanna update the email. So the email here, and that's gonna be user.email. And then we wanna update the name value. So our profile is gonna have a name attribute, but we're just gonna pull that from user.first_name. So that's gonna be it. So anytime we create a user, we're gonna create the user profile here, and we're gonna have a copy of that. So let's go ahead and just test this here. So let's make sure we don't have any errors. And now we won't have to manually create both. So we have two profiles and we have two users. So let's create a new user, and we're just going to call this user Stevo, and let's create a password here. Confirm that password, create that, and let's see. So we should have created a profile. So here we go. Now we have a profile, Stevo here, the username's connected, and any other information we can add, we can modify that. So we never gave Stevo a name, so we're going to leave that blank here. So there we go. That's what we did here. We just created a listener, and anytime we add a user, a profile is automatically created. And we're going to work with a few more signals later, but the last one we're going to do now is simply going to be the delete signal. So anytime we delete a user here, there is something inside of our models here. So in our profile model, anytime a user is deleted, what happens to the profile? Well, the profile is automatically deleted because of models.cascade. So let's test this. Right now we have 3 profiles, then we have a user here, we have 3 users. So let's go to Stevo and let's hit delete. So we have 2 users now and 2 profiles. So perfect. So Django already took care of that for us because of the relationship. But what if for some reason an admin decides to delete a profile, but they forget to delete the user? In this case, the user would stay. So in this case, let's create a new user. We'll just say Tim. Let's go ahead and duplicate this. So if an admin for some reason deletes a profile, or for some reason that happens, now we have Tim here. What if an admin goes to delete here? Now we're still going to have the user Tim, and this needs to go away here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use signals, and this is where signals are absolutely amazing. They make this so convenient. All we have to do is use this post delete, and we're going to listen to the profile. So when a profile is deleted, what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and just get that user. So the user is going to be instance.profile. Let's see, what did I call that actually? So the user is instance.user. So we're just going to go ahead and get that user. So it's going to be the profile's user. So instance.user, we're just querying that up, and then we're just saying user.delete. We're simply calling that delete method, and let's go ahead and save that. So just to recap, when a profile is deleted, the instance here is the profile. So we go ahead and go from the profile, we get the user because that's how we can get a one-to-one relationship. We just got that user because of this, and we simply delete the user. Now, when delete is called on the user, because we have models.cascade, if it doesn't see a user at that point, it doesn't matter. It's just going to go ahead and ignore the action. So the user now will be deleted. So let's go back into our admin panel and let's go into a profile. So we have 3 profiles, Tim, Dennis, and John, 3 users, Tim, Dennis, and John. Let's go into these profiles. Let's go to Tim, delete them, and let's see. So let's go to our users, and Tim is gone. So we just created that connection, and signals save our lives there. So what I want to do now is I actually want to put our signals into an external file here. So I don't like putting signals into our models. I think code should be separate. I think the more separate it is, we can just, I was going to say compartmentalize. I can't say that word right, but basically put it into compartments, and it just makes for cleaner code. So our models should be left alone here. So what I'm going to do is go into users, create a new file, and this is going to be called signals.py. So we're going to create that. Let's go into our models. Let's take all of these signals. So we'll even take this decorator here. So you can see that source code. Let's remove that. Let's go into signals.py. We'll paste that here. And we need to make a few imports here. So let's go into models.py. Let's take our signals here and our receiver. We're going to paste that into signals.py. And we also need our user model. So that'll be just underneath here. So our user model, and we also need our profile model. So from .models import profile. Okay, so our signals are now completely separated from our models.py file. So this looks a lot cleaner, and I like that. It keeps it separate, and it doesn't get confusing when more people join the project. So what we need to do next here is actually configure these new signals here to our app here. So when we built it in the models, they're able to fire off directly, but at this point, they will not trigger. So if I go to this profile create or create profile, and we'll just go ahead and type something in. We'll say profile signal triggered. Okay, so if I save this At this point, it seems like everything's connected. We have everything that we had inside of our models.py file. But if I go ahead and go into the app here, if I go into users, so remember this signal create profile gets triggered when a user is saved. So it's a user and not a profile. If I go in here and I try to update something, if I hit save, we are not going to see anything triggered here. So we're not seeing that message anywhere. So we just created that post request, but we don't see that message. What we need to do is we need to let Django know about this signals.py file. So we can go into our app here in users, and we're going to go into apps.py, and we're going to connect this to users config here. So let's go ahead and add this. We're going to go ahead and use the ready method here, and we'll pass in self. And in here, we're just going to go ahead and import users.signals. So now this app knows about this signals file and it can actually connect it. So if I try that again here, let's go ahead and test that. So I can go back to a user. We'll go to John Doe. Let's hit save. And let's see, did that fire off? So now I'm seeing it. Profile, signal triggered, and everything is finally connected. So we have that externally now. It's all connected and everything is working good here. So we'll work with this a little bit more later. One thing I did want to mention is that this will not work if you used the following method to register your apps here. So I've had this issue before. A lot of people like to register their app by just simply adding in a string like this, users. Make sure you do not do this. There's other ways of resolving this if you did, but if you connect it this way, then everything will work fine for you. So make sure you're doing things this way by going into the app name, apps, and then that config file. So that's it for this video.